So while it's setting up, good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to see legs and to see people, real people, and not just a screen. So I'm really excited to be here. I know that all of you wanted to see Jens physically. Me too. I would have liked to learn to hear his presentation, and not only me. But well, unfortunately, he cannot be here. So what I'm going to try to do is to tell you a little bit of the last 20 years of work, the way that we have been kind of building this common ground. That is what the conference is about, really. So I'm actually, some of the work has been already done by Ruth. So I'm going to try to be a little bit shorter and pass through some of the things that he has already said very quickly. As Jürgen has said today, validation is part of the founding regulations in CEDEFOP, and we have been working on it together with the Commission very closely. And as it has been mentioned in the beginning, it was really this book that I really think is very fundamental, because it really, as Ruth has said, it really plays, put all the basics there. So I'm not going to go too much into it, because I think Ruth has covered quite a lot of it. But I just want to mention these 4 issues, as are the learning outcomes. In a way, is already embedded there as an element, an important element to develop validation. The fact that there is more and more acknowledgement since then, already before, as Jens said also, that there is a growing interest, a growing understanding that learning occurs everywhere and all the time. And I think Ruth has also mentioned it very clearly, how there has been, from the year 2000, quite a lot of experimentation, both at national level and at European level. And I think that this common ground that we have been building through the Biennales, through other conferences, through all the different work that CEDEFOP has been supporting, has been really building that experimentation and cooperation and learning from each other. So I think that all that was already there seminal in that 2000-year book that Jens published. Then the 2012 recommendation, I think then, what it does is basically bring together all this and to some extent put it in a common ground, let's say, make it more explicit, and making sure that we are all talking about the same time, about the same things. It has also some elements, very important elements, like it gives the EQF advisory group a predominant role. It asks the Commission to support member states in the development of validation arrangements, and it explicitly mentions CEDEFOP to support the member states and the Commission. And it gives an important role to the guidelines and to the European inventory that had been already a part of the development of validation over the years. So I think that these are important elements to consider. And it gives us, in a way, the storyboard of what validation has been in Europe all these years. And as Ruth has said, it has taken a long time. It is taking time, but I think that, again, the cooperation and the effort has been quite successful from my point of view. I think one of the crucial things that the recommendation does is to give a common definition that is broad enough to accommodate the very different and huge variety of approaches that are across the whole Europe. And I think that the fact that we have these 4 phases: identification, documentation, assessment, and certification, really provides a good support, let's say, to be able to articulate the concept in the actual needs of the people. Because at the end of the day, we have to remember that this is for the individual. So there will be different emphasis on different of the phases, depending on what is the objective of that validation process. So if we need to get a formal certification, there will be more emphasis on certification. But if one wants to, for example, just acknowledge or identify the skills that they have acquired through voluntary work, maybe the emphasis will be more in the early phases of validation. And what we emphasize over and over again, you probably have heard me this many times, is the coherence across those 4 stages is what is crucial. All this, as also Ruth has mentioned, came in the European guidelines. We are working with many of you in developing the third edition. But I think the guidelines, again, were an instrument to kind of talk about these common challenges, look at what are the opportunities, what are the aspects there, and together kind of try to figure out where are the solutions. That, in a way, we try to collect in the European inventory of validation that, as you know, has been now going for quite a few years. And so I want to say a little bit of where we are now with what we have seen in the inventory, and we are now updating the we will have a new edition coming up in the next 2 years, together with the Commission again. And of course, what we know, and again, I think that all of you have seen this before, there is more validation arrangements in education, but more and more, and I think this conference is an example, there is more aspects in labor market actors and also third sector. We also see that there is more strategies, and the countries are creating more coherent strategies that overcome, like try to build between these different sectors. And we have seen also that the EQF and the NQF have had an important role to play. And this is what I was going a little bit fast on this past, if you want, and I think that Ruth has covered a lot of it. I'd like to now focus on the future in a way, and what is kind of the challenges or the main aspects that we believe are important for the future. And the first one, and again putting the individual at the center always, is really that we need to embrace the complexity of the validation process. Validation is about making learning visible and giving it a value, but it is really about taking all those experiences that are very diverse, very different, very fundamentally complex, and trying to make sense of them. And that really is a challenge that we are still struggling with since the very beginning, I think. In order to do this, it's crucial that we have support systems and guidance and counseling that supports the individual holistically, before, after, and also during a validation process. So it has to be integrated. What Jen said is validation cannot be in isolation. I think we have seen it also this morning. It's really about all the different services that we have in place, the labor market policies, health policies, social policies. They have to work together coherently. And I think validation is an important element. I was in a conference the other day and somebody was saying, this is a joint, let's say, of the whole system. The second thing is there is a diversity of needs, as I was saying, of the individual. And I think these different options, different stages of validation allow us to have a variety of possibilities for meeting the needs of the individuals that, again, are very different depending on the different context. And all this has to be done in a way that the individual can transfer from one sector to another, from one place to another, the learning that they have acquired. The problems that we have is that, I believe, there is a lot of barriers in what we learn in a way. We are able to certify certain knowledge and skills in specific sectors, in specific aspects, but this is very difficult to translate into other sectors or other aspects. So we need to create those bridges. And of course, to create those bridges, we need to bring together all these diverse stakeholders and make them work together towards something. And one of the elements that is very important for this is to have reliable and valid tools that need to be, again, fit for purpose. And this is really a balancing act of many different aspects, such as validity, reliability, scalability, and cost. You really need to bring all these different aspects, and I don't think I have the time to go into each of them, but we really need in the next few years to go into each of these elements. Is everybody okay there? There was a little bit of a fall there. It's okay? So, as I was saying, the balancing act really of these different aspects is something that I believe is going to be crucial for the next few years. And in order to create these tools, you need to have agreed standards. Again, the idea that all these diverse set of stakeholders that are involved in validation have to come to a common agreement of what are the points of reference for what we are learning and we are looking. What the Skills Lab is doing, for example, is an excellent example of how to bring together something that we can all look at. So it's again the fact that you have to base it on learning outcomes, the fact that you have to have national qualification frameworks that allow you to map all these different learning outcomes in a better way, and then decide what are those standards and how do they relate to each other in terms of learning outcomes. That is going to be important. And we need still quite a lot of work in learning outcomes, in how to define them, and how to write learning outcomes. And as you know, CEDEFOP has been doing a lot of work on this, and Jens will be able to tell you much better than me about it. And finally, I think the last very crucial element in the next few years is going to be the digitalization and certification issues surrounding validation. There is a lot of discussion about micro-credentials. There is a lot of discussion about badges, about digital credentials. And I think that it's obvious that digitalization is everywhere, and ICT is changing the way we do a lot of the things and give us a lot of possibilities and a lot of potential for what can be done. And I think that we need to kind of, again, see in what way all these elements of digitalization, the fact that through ICT we can create better registries, the fact that through badges, digital badges, you can have almost infinite amount of information in each of those certificates, the fact that maybe faking certificates is going to be more difficult. All these aspects that digitalization is bringing and changing the nature and the landscape of certifications is going to make a very important aspect for the future. So very quick, I wanted to be brief so I can leave also some time for our next speaker. That is the next speaker I'm looking forward. I thank you very much on this little movie that I would have liked Jens to present it to you together with me, but unfortunately you had to start. You were stuck with me. So thank you very much.